I've always found it really interesting that if you want to train your body, you know where to go. You go to the gym. If you want to run a marathon, you start running. You run 1 mile, 2 mile, to all the way to 26. But if you want to train your mind, what do? What's the equivalent thing that you need to do to practice to develop that high performance mindset?
So Glenn, what are some of the things that you've seen high-performing individuals do in their life to enhance their overall mindset?
It varies quite a bit. Now, the cool thing is that you can approach this in any number of ways. It could be mindfulness, it could be journaling, it could be a really standardized recovery procedure. The good news is that you can pick so many different ways to develop this quote unquote high performance mindset. And the research shows there's probably 5 or 6 avenues by which you can start to address it. The bad news is that you have to do it. You have to put in the time. It does not come from wishful thinking or thinking you have a high performance mindset just by thinking you do. You have to put in the work. You've got to put in the time. You've got to set aside a daily discipline or something that needs to be part of your routine, part of your habit that helps build that ballast, which is the foundation for a high performance mindset.
Can you give one example of doing that work? So if I were watching this at home, what would I do tomorrow? What do I do? How do I start tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, mindfulness, right? Sit down. You can listen to a meditation on YouTube or download one of those major apps or anything like that and sit and take 5 minutes to sit and breathe and relax. That's probably one of the most common ways that people start getting into this high performance mindset stuff is doing some realm of mindfulness or meditation or something like that. You can also start your gratitude journal. We'll have a lot of talk about gratitude both in your book, and so much of what GameChange is about is gratitude. Taking 5 minutes and really developing a sense of gratitude for something. It can be many different things, but the thing is put that time aside. And if you can't think of anything magical to do, set a timer for 5 minutes and honestly just lay down and don't go to sleep, don't look at your phone, and just breathe. It can be really simple. So you don't have to start crazy. People think
right.
It's kind of a similar sort of adoption of how we think you need to exercise, right? It's like you need a sweatband, you need ear pods, you need the best shoes, you need, all this stuff. And it's like, you know what? All you really need to do is walk around outside at a fast pace. 30, 35 minutes, walking as fast as you can, you'll get in better shape. You don't have to do anything fancy to do it. And same thing for mindfulness. You don't need to download 50 apps. You don't need to, buy an orange robe and dress like a Buddhist monk.
Which would be cool, though. I would.
You can if you want to.
Paul wants to be a Buddhist monk, by the way. That's his goal.
That would be. Let's do this. We can set that up. But so no, it's just be real simple. Be really kind to yourself, and start with knowing that. Having that high performance mindset, by the way, too, it's not meant to solve problems. It's not meant to make sure you're never in pain again or that you're not going to never suffer again. And it's not even necessarily that a high performance mindset will make you happy. They're really very different things, right? So the high performance mindset is really about present momentness. It's about being able to handle life's challenges. It's about being able to keep your crew together even when things are tough. That to me is what high performance mindset is. If you really want to start, define what high performance means to you. So write things down, write down what matters, write down the things that make you tick. That's the basis for it, because you need a center of gravity. You need something to come back to that's going to be rugged and reliable when things are tough.
Right.
So stepping out of the fray of life is really what you're talking about, to reflect on these things of what's is important to you, and what is performance, and who do you want to be, and how do you want to perform, and all of that sort of stuff. And through meditation or whatever form you want to take, and maybe it's trial and error and you find something that you really like, that will allow you to reach the heights that you want to reach in your life in every phase.
I mean, I think that's how you start, right? A lot can go wrong. Let's not be unclear that the world is crazy.
Right.
And there's things you can control and things you can't control. But the mindset, the performance mindset, will help you distinguish what you can control and what you cannot control, and learn to leverage what you can and make the best of it and go from there. You know, I mean, I think by even also looking at like, why do you want to do this stuff, right? Why do you want to know this? Do you want to know about yourself, or is it like an ego thing, right? And our research with military populations has shown that the ego-driven motivations tend to be a lot thinner than the more deeper self-love of a challenge that people can have. So the more you love the challenge, the more you're engaged in the stress of it. Typically, those people will get further, you know, faster with lower burnout, lower consequences.
So, you know, if the average person saw high performance mindset, I think what they would go to is 7 habits of highly effective people, things like that. Can you draw the correlation between mindfulness and gratitude to high performance? Because it would, to some people, seem really out of the box, because it's not about just forming these great habits.
Yeah, because like high performance is like doing. You
Right,
gotta go
right.
do.
It's
You gotta
out
go
there kicking ass.
run harder, faster,
Right,
climb
right.
more.
Yeah. So how does mindfulness and gratitude correlate to that?
That's a great question. So I have a model that I call the heart command lift model of high performance. And this is a model I've built over the last 5 years that helps explain what are all the components of achievement at a high level. It's a toolkit for these things. So heart command lift is heart, that's your motivation. Your achievement will only go so far as your motivation will take you. What's the reasoning? What are you grateful for that's gonna help you get out of bed in the morning, that makes you go, if I don't do this, like I'm gonna let this down and let myself down, like I gotta be grateful for the things I have. Today's the day to use the gifts that I have, to use whatever I have to do my absolute best. That's the crux of gratitude. It's a motivating emotion. These are the components of heart. And we all know, I love the word heart. I picked the word heart on purpose rather than motivation, because we know what heart means, right? You know, when you see somebody play with heart, your story of coming from ninth string, that's heart. That's a story of heart, of like, great, you just give me a ball and I'm gonna just chug my way up the ladder. That's heart, right? And so that's your motivation. That's that fire. That's the thing, the person who's gonna run a little harder, work a little harder. Something's gotta be underneath that. Okay, then you have command. You have to be good at what you do. You've got to be able to throw the best ball you can. You've got to be able to throw. Now, in your book, you also mentioned you were not the 80-yard bomb throwing. You were more darts, right? And accuracy and decision making. So that's in your command. So how do we get good at stuff? How do we become an expert? How do we practice efficiently and effectively? How do we learn? So for me as a professor, my command is, can I give an entire lecture without using so, like, whatever? Can I reach every single student in my room to make sure that he or she feels seen, that they know this is a place where they can be a scholar and learn and tell a story about the knowledge that we're covering? So that's under my command, right? That's my command. And I mean that in terms of leadership, right? Because we can all be leaders in whatever we do. You might not be the manager, the director, or the coach, or whatever, but you can still be a leader of your own domain. So leadership is not necessarily hierarchically driven. That's why I call this command, because you can be the leader of your efforts and also put the responsibility for becoming an expert and becoming excellent in whatever you do under your own cap. And then finally, the last part, which is the part you're talking about, is lift, because at some point, you've got to put it all together and throw the ball down the field, right? You gotta say,
You gotta do it.
You gotta do
dive
it.
it.
You
You
gotta
can't
do
just
it.
think
You gotta
about it,
stick your
practice
neck
it,
out.
yeah.
For an athlete, you gotta try that move you've never tried before. You've gotta run a little harder. You've gotta try a new strategy. You've gotta put yourself out there, and you've gotta be willing to put yourself onto the biggest stage available to you and accept whatever happens. right? So that's the lift component of it, where your ego's got to fall apart and you got to just put yourself out there. So that act involves vulnerability, stress management, emotion regulation. Those are all the things that are under the components of lift. So these three components, heart, command, and lift, are the three components of how I think anybody can reach and achieve things and, you know, incorporate some of these principles of high performance mindset into their life.
I mean, there's a lot of risk when you actually have to go do and put yourself out there.
Yeah, it's funny because I circled in on the same thing, vulnerability, right?
Vulnerability and willing to fail, because that's what you're doing. You're willing to put yourself out there. So the fact that you love it so much that it doesn't matter, you're willing to fail because you just love doing what you're doing, whatever that is.
I think, you know, love is a great word. I think the other word is curiosity. Right? Because curiosity is part of your heart. It's part of what's going to happen when I try this. Yeah, exactly. Okay. How good could I possibly be, right? If you're just curious about what happens, then if it doesn't go your way, it's not the end of the world. You learn something, right? And you go, okay, well then instead of doing X, I'm going to try Y next time. Not this is fruitless. This is worthless, right? I mean.
Well, I remember my first 3 years as a broadcaster at USC football. I had no idea what I was doing. Actually, I took the job. Well, I know the game and all that, but I took the job because I wanted to earn a little extra money. And I thought I was very mediocre, you know, when I did it. But
you were learning, right? You can't dive in as
there was no playbook.
Right.
Here's what you do. Here's how you here's the game. Let's go do it. I had to go seek out information from a guy named Jack Snow, who was a great receiver for the Rams, who had been doing analyst work for years.
Right.
And he gave me the boards and how to set it up and all this other stuff. And then I actually had a random call with John Madden, the late great John Madden in Chicago, of all places. I was on a business trip. I saw this huge bus there. I said, whose bus is that? Because I thought it might be Madden's. And it was preseason, August, so preseason game. And sure enough, the guy said, oh, that's John Madden's bus. I go, is he staying at the hotel? He goes, yeah. So I call him. I called John Madden on the phone.
Did he know who you were?
Well, his very good friend is a guy named John Robinson, who was my coach. So I, of course, threw that out there right away. And he spent 20 minutes with me. And I mean, the one thing that I always take away is, Paul, don't always talk about the quarterback, you know, and that's probably a bad John Madden impression, but don't always talk about the quarterback. Talk about the linemen and if you remember him, he touched on everybody and he loved the linemen more than anything. But anyway, so I had to do all that stuff on my own and I was pretty mediocre, but I gained experience, you know, and I wasn't beating myself up. To begin with, I was listening to my replay, the tapes, because we get these discs back, and I listen to those things. Like, God, that didn't sound very good. I mean, why'd you say that? And so there's a little bit of beating myself up, but not too much. And then, but I was learning from that and learning, and then at some point in time, I actually became pretty good. Because you know why I became really good? And I recommend being on live radio for anybody. Is because you get comfortable in your own skin with who you are. Because you have to. Because you're talking for 4 hours at a football game. And you can't be so programmed and thinking. You can't fake it. You can't be thinking and programmed and synthetic. You have to be natural, organic, real. And that's what people want. And making a mistake or fumbling is part of the whole thing.
I learned that on my first live radio interview. It happened when I was a postdoc. Scientist, I'm in the weeds. All I'm doing is crunching numbers all day. We published this paper on gratitude, and they said, we got a call from our PR at USC that says, Glenn, BBC Radio wants to interview you live on the air tonight during the main rush hour traffic. And I was like,
oh man.
And I just remember thinking, yeah, how hard could that? Yeah, cool, whatever. Yeah, whatever. Fun. I talk about gratitude. I've been around. It's fine. And I totally froze. I mean, luckily the guy was like, so you interviewed, you know, we did our research involving stories from the Holocaust, which is a whole separate thing. So we had this very serious backdrop for the research, and he his summary of the research was completely wrong.
Okay.
And as a scientist, my first thought is to do the standard actually, right? Which is everybody hates. But I knew I couldn't because we're live on the air.
Right.
And so it made the rest of it totally flat. And I don't know, my wife came in and she's like, well, how do you think that went? I was like,
did she hear it?
Yeah. And I was like, I think I didn't embarrass myself, but it was not good, you know? And I just was like, I want to get back in the ring. And like, that was my response, was like, God dang it. I want to get back in there. Like, but call the guy back. I want to do that again. And that's when I was like, that's part of what inspired my career, is like, I don't want to just be the scientist studying this stuff. That's why I've come up with this heart command lift model, is each one of these dimensions has 30 papers that I've taken the time to read that I can teach people about. Here's the nuance, here's the guardrail for that. Here's why the 10,000 hour rule doesn't work for so many of the things that we do, right? When it comes to building expertise, here's when it does work, here's where it doesn't work. That's based on my understanding of all the research of things. That's why, so like moments, those failures, like that interview, that was a flag to me that like, my heart was singing a little bit. I was like, I kind of like that. Like, I should chase that down a little bit. Let me try to get good at that, about explaining science to people. So if I ever get the chance to go live on BBC radio again, I know how to reach people. Right. So
that's a great response, because I think most people would be
great
the opposite.
response.
They would be like,
they would freeze.
Yeah, I suck at this. I will never do radio again.
That's right. They don't want to jump back in.
So
have another.
You were like, I can't wait to try this again. Is awesome.
Yeah, I had the physiology of this, since we're talking science real quick, is it's called the challenge and threat continuum. So you're faced with stressors all the time, and how you interpret that stressor sends your body into a challenge or a threat state. This has to do with lift. And there's a host of physiological things that happen in our heart and our vasculature that occur. And typically, the more you take that stress and push yourself into the challenge state, the more ready you're going to be to handle whatever comes next. It's an active engagement with the challenge. It's not blinking in the face of adversity. It's that kind of enjoyment of the stress that pushes our body into a state of readiness for things. So that's at the end what you're really training your high performance mindset for. Just to come full circle here, what you're really training your high performance mindset is that's when it does come down to you, that stress sends you into a challenge state of readiness, of engagement, of enjoyment during that time.
So we talked about vulnerability and failing. You've worked with Navy SEALs, and I'm interested to learn how they have to respond to failure, because their consequences of failure are far greater than ours.
Yeah, it's a big question. When I've said that to them, I said, well, failure for you, if you have a mistake, it's you die instantly. And they're like, actually, there's a continuum of failure. There's a lot of mistakes you can make, that we're always still chasing a perfect mission. You can still get all the guys back and have an imperfect mission. And you almost never have a perfect run through, and it almost never goes as well as your training will go, but they're still chasing it. So they even see still there's a continuum for what it would look like for the different kinds of mistakes that they can make. They're still chasing a perfect mission, even if it looked from the outside like, oh, that went really well.
I think this is really interesting. Don't they debrief the mission together? And don't they have to admit themselves, each one of them, I should have done this, I could have done this better, which is the heightened sense of vulnerability to be able to do that in front of your peers. Absolutely, yeah.
It varies platoon to platoon, of course, how they do the debrief and stuff like that, and how much vulnerability they can show. So it's interesting. It's an interesting thing, but it's hard to crowd across them with all the things. But at the end of the day, they're much more flat hierarchically than you'd expect, particularly in the Marines I was hanging out with, where I thought it was going to be this person comes down and that's it. There's a lot more up talk and upward management. Now, it's never disrespectful, but it's much more collaborative than I think people give them credit for.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
This is the part where we're supposed to tell people to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Okay, will you please do that then? I mean, if you enjoy it, please do.
And if you don't, do it anyways, because we need your help.
We do.
Also, we have a website called GameChangeNation.com. Just go there and subscribe and you'll get tons of free content.
And what we're really trying to do is create a community of people that love sports.
Yep.
And the great lessons that we learn from sports, but we want to hear from you.
We do. So we're going to have a bunch of social media pages from TikTok to Instagram to Twitter to Facebook. Instagram, I probably already said all of them. Please join them and tell us your stories. We'd love to hear from you. Oh, and we wrote a book.
Oh,
Forgot about that.
Forgot that.
The book is called Through the Tunnel. It's available on Amazon now. If you go straight down here to this link that you can see below us, you will be able to purchase it. We'd love it if you could do it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.